Good morning, everybody. We're live. Welcome to Be Career Confident LinkedIn Live, and we're hoping no technical issues. We thought we'd got feedback this morning, but hopefully we're all good. I'm really delighted to welcome Lynn and Emma with me this morning. We are doing a little bit of on mute just in case there is some feedback. For those of you who haven't joined us before, this is our monthly Be Career Confident session all about careers. And this is to help anybody who's looking for a career or people are looking to hire. Myself and Charlotte Sykes created this in the pandemic, which, can you believe, is about 2 years. We're coming up to our 2-year anniversary of doing that. And that was to ensure that we were there in a remote capacity to support everybody. And we've continued it, but now we just go live every month. This month, we are tackling the subject of job applications, interviews and counteroffers. So that's from if you're looking to apply for a role or you are also looking to hire. I am delighted that I have got one of our affiliates, Lynne Rose, with me this morning. Morning, Lynn, and equally delighted that we have guest Emma Sutherland with me. Lynn, let me come to you. Just quick introduction for our guest. Fire away.
Thanks, Ruth. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Lynne Rose. I'm a recruiter, but I've got 20 years experience of recruitment. I run an independent generalist agency in Salisbury in Wiltshire, and yeah, I'm also one of the Be Career Confident career practitioners. So yeah, great to be here this morning.
Great to have you, Lynn. Emma.
Morning, everyone. Ruth, thank you very much for the invite to be here. I am Emma Sutherland. I have worked in HR for 20 years now, unbelievably. I'm also career coach, women's leadership coach, and trainee yoga teacher as well.
Honestly, I don't know how she's juggling everything, but it's a very nice blend. We're going to talk through, as I say, regarding challenges, opportunities, hints and tips regarding the interview process, that initial application process, and also the big thing at the moment around counteroffers. Please use the chat. Any question, pose it to us. It's great to get your thoughts or even comments on what we're talking about. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. And we're going to kick off by applications, because applications now have changed. And I think whether you're starting out in your career or if you're suddenly applying for a role, even 3 years after you last applied for something, things have changed. And I think one of the big things that has changed is portals. So when you're applying for that role now, it's not click on an email, upload your CV into it or send it into an inbox. There is these things of portals. And I think it's important to probably explain a little bit about how they work, but also how we can still have a really positive application process through a portal. So Emma, you have portals within the organisations that you've worked for. Have they come to fruition because of a volume to implement a process? What's the reason they've come through, and what's your sort of initial thoughts on hints and tips for having a good application process and using a portal?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the businesses that I've worked with, the use of portals is about managing a process effectively. So if you've got just an email application going into one person, there is a huge risk that that's going to disappear into somebody's inbox or disappear into junk or whatever. So it's about standardizing that process and hopefully treating candidates consistently when they're coming through. The risk is you've not got somebody looking at each application as it comes in via an email. You've got them sort of firing into a box that a recruiter or a hiring manager might look at as and when they're managing that vacancy. And yeah, somebody's looking at all the applications together rather than perhaps as those emails come in.
And it's a challenge, Lynn, that we have, isn't it, of when you're preparing somebody to go for an interview. Our original standard would be the cover letter, make it bespoke, add the CV. But the challenge now will be is in that portal process, is there always the option to add a cover letter?
Yeah.
And also, depending on what you're recruiting for and who's looking at those CVs and how busy everybody is as hiring managers, will they read the cover letter as well as the CV? Yeah. What's your thoughts, Lynn? And by the way, good morning in Texas at 3:33. Thank you very much for joining us. But my goodness, that is very early. So welcome.
Yes, I think I can see it from both sides. I think as a employer, having that process followed is useful. But I think, and as Emma said, that the danger is sometimes in inbox it does get lost. But I think from an applicant's point of view, it can be a bit daunting. It can be a bit off-putting. But I think the secret is it depends on the portal. But I think it's about. I think a lot of people are afraid they can't actually give the information they want to give or the impression they want to make on a portal. So we always say if you are going to use a portal, kind of treat it like you would your CV or covering letter. Really look at the question that they're asking and kind of apply the same principles almost in terms of the information you're putting on. And take your time to do it properly, sort of thing. But yeah, I think it can be a bit of a block for quite a lot of applicants. I think, as you said, Ruth, especially people that are coming back to the job market and haven't had to do that for a while. So, and as recruiters, we work with a partner with an employer, we have to still upload this, the portal with our information. So, it's about, we've learned to talk to our, the people we're working with to make sure that we are kind of, doing the best we can from our side. So it is really tricky. It's a real balance, I think. But I think it's about taking the time when you're doing your online application, to kind of work through it in a detailed, structured way to make sure you don't miss anything, and that you have got as much information on there as you can, in the right way. But think about the answers you're putting on.
So great question here to follow up on this. So I'll just bring this up. So Karen, thanks for the question. Good to hear thoughts from the panel on how applicants can get their personality across in the portal. Karen's hiring this year and getting the right personality is key to her business. So Emma, I'm going to come back to you about reviewing CVs in a portal. What do you look for?
I'm actually going to take that back a step on the back of that question, Karen. I think it's a great question. And I think it's up to us as hiring managers and businesses to get across to applicants in the first instance, what is it that we are looking for as a business? So are we putting out there, what's important to us in terms of the people that we hire and the people that will, be successful, or who is it that wants to work for us? This is who we are and what we're like. So I think there's an onus on us to make sure that we're presenting the personality of the business through what we're putting out there on the portal or websites or social media. And I'm not a great one for this, and I'm lucky that I work with some people that are fantastic at it. So I think that getting that out there is important so candidates can understand what it's like to work for the business or for the organisation. And I think it's also incumbent on the candidates to think about who it is that they're applying for and whether they are a good fit. Because I think there has been a tendency in the past for people to just throw a CV and a generic CV at absolutely everything that's exactly the same. And so is it really going to hit the mark? I think for me, it's about the candidates absolutely doing the research and thinking about where would I best fit? is this role a fit for me? And that will then help them with that sort of matching process, because I think it's on both sides. I think in terms of CVs standing out on a portal, absolutely thinking about what are the bits that you want to highlight in that CV. Is it just uploading the CV, or would it be better off to ask somebody to fill in the questions? I mean, some of the systems are really sophisticated and will pick out the bits of the CV, but has the candidate made sure that it all makes sense when the boxes are all going together? And I think that's where I think most of the systems I've seen will give you that option to add comments or add a cover letter or present something about themselves. And that would be, I think there are a number of candidates that if they're just filling in the boxes and not really paying attention, if it's not a mandatory box to fill in, they might just think, I won't bother. I think a candidate would stand out if they are taking the time, and you can see that, maybe asking some specific questions at that stage to see their personality and are they taking the time to fill them in? Do they really want to work for you? Because for me, I guess that's potentially a measure.
I totally agree. And I would say even without a portal, certainly when we've been hiring, on the advert, I put, please send your CV and a cover letter of why you would like to work for our organisation. Then people upload their CV with no cover letter. So I'm not doing it. So that just speaks volumes to me on that. So that's a measurement for me. So you can put some measurements in place, I would think, Karen, of what you want to see and see whether they deliver. The other thing very important about brand and culture, when we're writing adverts and when you're writing an advert for your organisation, for me, a third of it should be what that person's going to be doing. That's it. There should be a third of, this is us as a business. This is what we do. This is what we stand for, and trying to get that culture over. A third is the job. And then a third is, this is what we will do for you. This, if you come and join our organisation, this is what you can expect. And then on the opposite side, I'm working with a graduate at the moment. So classic graduates, what do I put on my CV? We just need to do a draft. So we've got a framework of what their core capabilities are. We're like, there's not a lot more on here. No. Because when you come to apply for the role, I want you to think about the role. And then I want you to put in your CV, especially in that profile and that introduction opening statement, why you want to work for this organisation and why you think this role is right for you. So you can't prep that until you see the advert. And my advice would be on portals specifically is when you're applying for a role, take the time and care to put your personality across and show that you've understood the job role and the company. Do a cover letter, but then take some of your key points and put that in your in your opening statement. So there's a little bit of a duplication just in case the cover letter doesn't get read. Because not all people prepare for interviews the same way, do they, Emma? You said people will print off everything, and some people will just print off their CV.
And it's possible, if you've got a lot of applicants for a role, I do still prefer to have the paper version. I'm conscious of the environmental impact of that, so I do think before I print, but I'd much rather review the paper. And sometimes I will, if there's lots of them, I may miss a document, or I guess for me, the most important one is probably the CV. I will always still pick up a CV first.
Yeah.
Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, just having these conversations has made me think about the process I use. So yeah, I will always generally make sure I've got everything and prep ahead of an interview, but it might be that it's the CV that is really what I'm looking at in terms of sifting.
Yeah.
So repetition is good.
Good. Hope that helps, Karen. Yes, good insight. So we're good. So I think to summarise on the application point of view, it is remembering who you're applying for to, what you're applying for, bespoke the application, show a hiring manager that you have taken the time to understand what they're looking for and showcase your skills specifically for that role. And to get the right people to apply for your role, showcase your culture. Don't post a job description as an advert. Jean. Oh, we've got a question here. We need to bring this one in. Thank you, Jean. What's your views on video applications? So I don't have a lot of experience of this, I'll be honest with you. But I know a lot of people, especially on international, actually I'd be really interested to understand actually in the US, if this happens in the US, that you do a video interview, or you get sent a certain amount of questions to answer, and you do a video screening. And I think I've seen it as not as an application, but more as the first stage of a screening. Emma, do you do anything like that or seen anything like that?
I've seen it, and I've seen sort of companies advertise and sort of say, please apply with your CV and a short video of why it is that you want to work for us. So back to Karen's question before, in terms of, maybe getting some enthusiasm or getting the vibe of somebody, it's potentially a good idea. I think the risk, I guess, is any potential biases, either conscious or unconscious, could be something around that process. And I guess the whole advent of Teams and Zoom and everything else now for interviewing potentially means that we can, do the remote thing and get through applications more quickly, rather than people having to travel for miles and all of those kind of things. So I think maybe the last couple of years might have even changed that again. I have also seen it used as part of graduate processes or graduate roles, those kinds of things as well. But for me, it sort of doubles up as the sort of the application and the first stage of screening, I guess. If presenting is going to be a key part of a role, then it's potentially a way of somebody showcasing their skills and you being able to get more across, but not a huge amount of experience from me.
And actually, so interesting, in the US, it's used as a screening tool a lot, and I can see that in the screening process. But I think that Emma, you've picked up a really good point there, which is it's about the role, isn't it? Because if you want somebody who's customer facing, then this could be a really good tool. But if you are somebody who's you're wanting a detail orientated person who is not front and center, and then you ask them to go front and center on a camera, it's not the match, is it? So we need to think about what you're hiring for and the skill set that you need, and putting them in for that in that process in the right way.
And I mean, it's potentially a good way of screening people out who feel uncomfortable doing something like that. If it's a key, talking to people is going to be a key part of the role, I guess, that could be useful. But equally, if you've got somebody that maybe just lacks confidence in terms of doing it, but could be taught how to do it quite successfully, then you might miss out on a great candidate because you've got that as part of your hiring process. So I don't think there is a right or wrong. So I think there are lots of tools out there. I think it's choosing the right one for the recruitment process itself.
Brilliant. Thanks for adding that in, Jean. So we've got the applications. We're now moving into interviews. So I think there's a lot going off with interviews at the moment. We all know that the market is tight, busy, skills are in demand, which is why we're also concluding with counter-offers at the end of this session, because this is a big thing. When we're coming into the interview, from Lynne and myself working with people and preparing them for interviews, we do certain things on this whole preparation and following up. Again, I've just got a couple of questions before we go into the detail of it, of the connecting with people, Emma, from a hiring point of view. So as recruiters, we're advising people how to be the best they can be and prepare. So once you've put an application over or you're going for an interview, LinkedIn can be a great tool to utilize to see who's hiring, what their career has been before, and to utilize to connect with somebody. And there's several ways at what point we can connect. So it could be you put the application in and then you connect with them, or you're going for an interview and you're connecting, or you connect post an interview. How do people feel about being connected with from that point of view? Does it add value in their application process? If you're interviewing somebody and you see they've looked at your LinkedIn profile, do you think they're doing their research, or does it have no bearing on it at all?
For me, it would have no bearing at all.
Okay.
But I'm not a huge social media user. I'm on LinkedIn. I try and, I try to be selective. I try to make sure I do know the people that I'm connecting with, rather than just clicking accept all the way down. I think it's useful, and I think it's encouraged now. So I guess I would throw that back to the recruiters in the room and say, do you encourage people to LinkedIn stalk their hiring managers?
I wasn't going to use that word, but you've gone for it. You've got in there, so that's fine. You're the guest. You're allowed to. Actually, as we've been talking, it's made me ask a question. So, if we're treating people equally, is that part of an equal process? Just because somebody, or is that an advantage? So I'm not sure. I would have always said do it and prepare. But again, if we said that somebody was more private but was great at their job, you wouldn't want to then think, well, they haven't done their prep. So, Lynn, what do you think?
Yeah. As you say, that does throw out that question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think from, I get it if I'm recruiting for my clients. I will advertise a role and I will get a candidate connect with me on LinkedIn after they've made their application. And to me, I think that's a plus point, absolutely. I think but you're right, Ruth. Yes, obviously Emma wouldn't put any weight on the fact that somebody may or may not connect with them. But I think subconsciously, I think, from my view, I think it would give you an advantage, even if, not saying you wouldn't do it, Emma, you're saying you wouldn't, but, if you spot that name, you think, and if it comes down to a few people that you think, this is a tough one, who's kind of impressed me the most, would you take that into consideration that they'd connected on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
I suppose it's with the point that you do it as well. So, it may be that someone's following you, but after the interview, getting a message to say, I really enjoyed my interview. Thank you. I hope I got across the fact that I've got these skills, which I think would really lend itself. It's kind of another way of, we used to say, send an email to follow up. Perhaps that's a better way of doing it after the interview process, or perhaps from the employer's point of view, if someone does try and connect with you before, you leave it until after the interview to connect with them, possibly.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the personality, doesn't it? In terms of what people feel comfortable doing. Does it mean if I don't send an email that I wasn't interested in, or somebody wasn't interested in the role? Potentially not. They just might be busy. So I think it's important not to ascribe too much, potential bias to, they didn't bother to email me afterwards, so they clearly don't want the job, because that may or may not be the case. But I guess in terms of what people feel comfortable doing in terms of reaching out via social media or those kind of things is really going to depend on the person. But as a way of standing out, absolutely. And I was listening to a podcast, it was an American podcast actually, so Clarity on Fire, and they've got a sort of a recruitment specialist in the US, and her advice was absolutely to reach out to somebody that you might want to work for, and sort of almost offer your value before even applying for a role. So if you're kind of planning and you're thinking about the businesses or the careers or the people that you want to work for, you know, that kind of connection will make you stand out in the market. So I guess it depends what you feel comfortable doing and approaching, really.
Yeah, I agree. And Tracy, thanks for your comment. I think it's important that your LinkedIn profile is up to date and fully reflects your skills referring to the role. So I think that's really important. And that, like you say, Emma, you're connecting with the people that you want within your network, but your profile is up to date.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on to the interview process itself, because the market that we're in at the moment, they can feel that we're not on the same page sometimes, maybe, as if we're recruiting a role for a client as external recruiters, or even internal recruitment teams, and liaising with the relevant stakeholders within a business. Because we have to, and we always say this, we have to remember that as recruiters, internal or external, this is our job 100% of the time, all of the time. For the hiring manager, it's I was going to go 10%, Emma, but maybe not even that of their role.
I think it depends on where your business is at or where your organisation's at, and what's going on at the time. So yeah.
It's very low down, isn't it? And what we've all heard these stories, we've all heard, and we've all probably experienced it. Dealing with a recruiter, dealing with an internal person, you've got a vacancy, you go off, you find the right people for the job, the candidates are ready and on standby, you go back to the client, CVs aren't reviewed as quick as expected, interviews don't happen as quick as expected, the hiring managers are getting the phone calls going, you're going to lose this person because you're not moving quick enough. And there becomes this frustration. And it's all about the relationship. Emma, you positioned it in a really great way when we spoke about it being a project and about alignment. Could you just share with how you approach this and what your thoughts are on making this challenging piece successful?
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm perfect. So have I had recruiters, both internal and external, chasing me? Yes, I have. So I'm not going to say that I'm some paragon of virtue on this, what my intentions and what I aspire to. So I think whatever organisation I've either worked for, and anybody I talk to right now, nobody's sat around waiting for things to do. They are all really busy, whatever the sector they're in. So prioritizing recruitment or tasks is going to be a challenge. So for me, you've got to prioritize the recruitment, because if you are overworked and your team is overworked, then one thing you need to do is bring in more resource. And we all know that really the recruitment process is only the start of that, because if people are on, the right person is on a notice period and so on, you've then got, potentially an extended period where your team are under pressure. So actually, as the manager, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm taking steps to alleviate that and make sure that we're resourced in the right way. So for me, and I remember distinctly working with a team of recruiters, we tried to approach it as each vacancy was a project. So we knew once we'd got that role approved, what were the steps that we needed to take? When was it being advertised? So when did that mean that we were going to review CVs? When did that then mean that we needed to interview? If it was a senior level role and it was a panel-based interview, so you're not just trying to coordinate one person's diary, it's potentially 2 or 3. And these were in the days kind of pre-doing the video interviewing that we potentially can fit in now. It was getting everybody in the same place at the same time. And we've maybe only got one day when we can do that. But booking that out in people's diaries up front, so we know where those slots are. If it's if there is more than one stage of the process, again, booking that second stage in, you can always take the time out of the diary, rather than trying to find it further down the line. And I think for me, if you try and find slots for me for this week, that's going to be a challenge. So the further ahead that you plan and try and think ahead, then the easier that process is going to be. But knowing it can't be too far ahead, because you've got to try and be dynamic. And if you get candidates in, then I know I'm going to be pushed by recruiters to say, right, when can you interview? Well, it's the middle of next week, actually. Oh, that's just no good. And plus I'm on holiday. Okay, so where do we go with that? And there are going to always be constant challenges. But I do think that trying to plan those dates in advance is a good thing to do. And I do think that there's potentially that requirement to say, can candidates do earlier in the morning or later in the evening to try and fit that in? I think the advent of all the Teams Zoom technology is fantastic, because particularly at first stage, you can do it this way. So, you know, there's an investment there. You're seeing somebody face to face, and it potentially means you can move more quickly and potentially squeeze something in a way that you couldn't necessarily sort of in the old days.
And I think, yeah, I mean, certainly trying to get 3 people for a regional role, you know, you're trying to get somebody down from Scotland, somebody up from London, and, you know, it was a challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think what you've highlighted there it is also about this real key about this good relationship and communication. So because if that conversation happens at the beginning, internally and externally, then we're managing everybody's expectations. You've planned some time, but you're managing people's expectations of this is when it's going to happen by. Melanie has commented, totally agree with blocking out time for interviews, but we also do, you know, admit there's a frustration here as well that, you know, we can say to hiring managers, please book this time out for interviews, and then people don't turn up, and you've got lost time at that point. Which, as you said, it's when we were talking earlier in the week, it's about having that full being courteous throughout the whole process, isn't it? And an element of, well, a very big element of communication. Of this looks like it might, we're not sure this is going to happen. You might want to have something on the back foot for you to step in and do something else if these interviews don't happen. But it is that courtesy, isn't it? And that working together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have had numerous situations where you're sat there waiting for either a video or a face-to-face interview to start, and nobody shows. And even within HR, I you know, whether it's right or wrong, I do kind of think HR people should know a bit better. Whether that's a fair thing to say or not, I'm sure somebody can tell me. But if I have no issue if somebody's gone and got another role which they feel is right for them, I'm happy for them, absolutely happy for them. Yeah. But a little bit of courtesy to say thank you for the opportunity, but I won't be accepting the interview is absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that. It's just frustrating if you've made the effort to be somewhere, or you've prioritized recruiting somebody new for the team over spending time with an existing hardworking team member and a one-to-one and their development. That's where you know, yeah, it does get a little bit frustrating.
I've got a feeling that we've hit a little bit of a nerve here with the amount of comments that are coming through. You know, this is the frustrating bit is, you know, it's if we set out at the outset with the candidates, this is when it's going to be, then from a hiring process, we're doing the right thing. But also on the other side of things, if you're hiring, the flexibility of interviews as well of, as you've said, Emma, outside sometimes of normal office hours will be more helpful to people because they can jump on a call, and just that bit of flexibility, certainly for the first interview, because then you can have that conversation as well. It takes 2 minutes to drop a text. I'm trying to keep up with this conversation because it's really, there's this, unfortunately somebody's had some really bad experience of being contacted by multiple agencies, given false hope, and then getting ghosted, seeing the adverts being re-advertised, lots of things like this. My advice on this is, you know, once you've lost respect for that recruiter, that relationship is broken. If they're dealing with you in that way, they're probably dealing with the client in the same way, which means they don't have the relationship with the client. So my biggest advice on all of this would be, if you are a hiring manager and you're dealing with an internal or an external recruiter who is asking for your time to scope out the project of recruiting this person, and they're probably going to need 45 minutes of your time, maybe longer, because of the advert and the job description and all of that, you need to give them that time at that bit up front, because then they can manage all of this for you. They can manage the brand, they can manage the expectation, and people talk, as we are all doing now. So as a hiring manager, give time. And if you're looking for a job, if you're an applicant and you're dealing with a recruitment business and they don't have this type of information, that's when your alarm bells need to be going. And just be aware of what's happening within that process. So if they're a little bit aloof on information and detail, it will mean that it's a very transactional process and there isn't a relationship there. So the best recruitment solutions happen when everybody's in partnership together. These things will carry on happening. Nobody's perfect. There will still be things where clients will come to us and go, can you just deal with this for us? You know who we are. Can you just do it? And we can feel the pressure that they're under and we try and get them through it. But in a perfect world, it's about creating that time, I think. Wow. People talk though, don't they?
Yeah, and you know, we don't know what's going on for anyone in that process. And you know, can I honestly say that there has never been a time where I've forgotten to send an email or a follow up or whatever to say whatever. And yeah, so you know, I'm not going to say that I'm perfect by any stretch, but there are some absolute horror stories out there in terms of how people have been treated, and you know, it's not great. That's all damage to the brand, because you know it's or you know, whichever organization you work for, if you get a reputation for, you know, not handling people in the right way, then it's going to make it harder to recruit. So why would you want to do that? Makes no sense.
I can't believe how quickly time is going. And I got so much I want to talk to you about counteroffers. So okay. Let's just tackle this. There's several situations that are happening at the moment, and everybody is being approached. So if you're on LinkedIn, I guarantee you are getting approached by recruiters, internal recruitment teams. Come and work for us. This is what we're looking for. When you're going into that world of headhunting, dangling a carrot to people, somebody's not at that point decided to move. Do you think, Lynn, I'll come to you. Do you think that if somebody is being approached and headhunted, there is more chance of a counteroffer at that point?
Yeah, probably. There's probably more chance, I think. Or it's certainly, you know, I think it's one of those situations, if you do get approached, I mean, you may feel you're happy at work, but actually that does make you think, oh, you know, that perhaps there is something better out there. And it may, I think, you know, start that, but it might just start a conversation internally for you to think, you know, I'm going to have that conversation with my line manager before I, you know, reply to this person who's trying to headhunt me. And, you know, sometimes it's quite a healthy conversation, isn't it? And actually it might reaffirm that, no, actually I'm in a good place and I've got room to grow. Or you might think, well, actually, perhaps I have kind of been settling for a bit too long. So yeah, I think it's one of those situations. I mean, you know, that is the most frustrating part, I think, of my role as a recruiter, when, you know, you and an employer, you know, you've gone through a good process. It's been, really well communicated. It's been, reciprocated on both sides, and then you get to the point and make the offer and it's accepted, and then 2 days later that the applicant comes back and says, I'm really sorry, I've been counter offered. Really, really frustrating, as we were saying about time, wait, from both sides. So I think that headhunting bit is actually quite a good time to kind of if you are headhunted, to kind of think, well, actually, yes, let me think about it. What's happening where I am. So I think it'd be quite healthy, actually. It's quite a boost for your ego, actually, hasn't it? It's quite a boost.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps, and actually makes you think about what you do in your role, and are you appreciated, and all that. So I think it's quite a healthy situation, to be honest.
I also think it's a great, it all comes back to, again, about this relationship, doesn't it? The relationships we have with the people that we work with and for, and the businesses that we work in. And, hopefully within organisations, regular one-to-ones are happening and people are having the opportunity to sit down and have open conversations about their how their work is going and whether they're happy and their progression. Emma, so somebody comes to you and has the conversation of, been approached, so they feel comfortable. So great, straight away we're good, because they feel comfortable, they're going to come and talk to you, they're going to tell you, they're going to have a conversation. So I'm interested to understand from an internal point of view of how that makes a line manager feel within their team, and things that people may need to consider within this.
So I think if somebody is approaching me, then it's always good. I think there's going to be a conflict of emotions, if I'm honest, because it's a case of, I will take that personally, because, I want that person in the team. I'm hoping I'm doing a good job. So, I guess I reflect that back and say, am I doing the best job I can as a line manager? What can I learn from this? But I think if that's a great situation, actually, because you've got the opportunity to try and do something about it, and somebody that's prepared to be open, great. I think the challenge comes where somebody's gone off and got themselves, another job, and they're saying, well, I'm resigning. What are you going to do for me? And sort of using it as more of a bargaining chip, then that's potentially a different dynamic that's coming to the table. I think as employers, it's hard, because depending on the organisation you work for, there may be nothing you can do. If it's about money and it's a case of, well, they've offered me this amount of money, if you've got pay and grading scales and you have an annual pay review and you stick to that and all of those kinds of things, then actually there may be very little you can do. And it's not going to be about the money you're talking about. It's going to be, okay, so what else is it? So I think we talked about, I was trying to remember back to my CIPD motivational theories. Was it Hertzberg or McGregor? I can't remember which one. Any CIPD studies out there? I don't know whether we're still talking about them, and I did my CIPD a while ago, but that kind of motivation and hygiene factors. So my learning from that theory was that money is not a motivator, it's a hygiene factor. So the money has to be right. And everything, the learning development, the progression is a motivator. So clearly, if the money isn't right, then you can't move towards some of those motivators. But actually, if you can't do anything on the money, but there is something you can do with development, is there an apprenticeship levy that could be tapped into to get somebody that level 7 qualification or whatever, and that's gonna help. That's that is beneficial to them, and looking at the whole package rather than just the base salary. But again, I think the candidate's or the employee has got to come in knowing what they're talking about and what is actually important to them.
I'll do an additional post on this, because when you spoke about this, I found this really interesting, and I'd not heard of Hertzberg's theory, but just to read off these, I thought these were great. So motivating and hygiene factors. Motivating factors were achievement, recognition, work itself, responsibility, advancement and growth. Hygiene factors were company policy, supervision, working conditions, interpersonal relationships at work, salary and benefits, and job security. And just, I'll read a little bit of what he said. He said his studies indicated that certain job factors are consistently related to employee job satisfaction, where others can create job dissatisfaction. And there's a lot in here about how they link to each other and where the intrinsic job elements can then lead to worker satisfaction. So I'm going to share a little bit more about this, because I just thought when we spoke about it originally earlier in the week, it was like, yeah, that's the motivation. It's not just about the salary, is it? It's about the whole thing, and people change. People's hygiene factors and motivating factors will change about what they're looking for. Whereas salary could have been important at one point, not working shifts could be now important. Salary is irrelevant. With the way that the economy is at the moment, salary could be a lot higher. I'm going to share more about that. I can't believe we're 10:15, just over. I'm going to ask you both first of all, thank you so much. We could have done an hour. And thank you very much for everybody's comments in there. Top tips from today and looking for a job, Lynn, what do you think on top tips?
My top tips would be, what we said at the start, take your time with everything you do when looking for a job. Take a time to read the advert, find out about the company before you make that application, and then take your time with your online application, with your CV, with your covering letter, however you're going to, make your application. Don't kind of sit at your lunch break think, I'm going to apply for this job, let's quickly do the online portal. Take your time, basically. So, and one quick second tip, keep a track of the roles that you've applied for as well. Really important.
And know what CV you've sent.
Yeah, that's right. Rather than saying, sorry, what role was it?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my 2 top tips. Take your time and keep a track of what you've applied for.
Thank you. Emma, from a hiring manager's point of view, top tips.
I think be clear on the candidate you're looking to hire for your team. Make sure you plan the recruitment process and prioritise hiring to support your team and your business or your organisation.
Perfect. Thank you for a wealth of knowledge. I will be honest with you, I've learned so much over when we've been prepping and today. That has been absolutely brilliant. Emma, thank you very much for joining us. Lynn, lovely to see you as always. Next month, April the 7th, got Charlotte back with me. So it's myself, Charlotte. I'm also joined by David Callum and also Stuart Cooper. And we're going to be talking about developing our skills for now. So this is, what do we need today and how can they be transferable? We've got a skill shortage, looking at what we can do, looking at what who we can hire and how we can develop people. So that's April the 7th. But for now, thank you very much for everybody for your comments in the chat. That has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it, and good luck for your interviews and good luck for all of your hiring. Have a great day, everybody.